Hello there, silly little gay people in my computer. I hope you all are having a lovely day. Today, I just kind of wanted to dig into a question that has been on my mind a lot recently, given the, way that Sonic Racing Crossworlds kind of blew up in all the best ways. What are the next crossover characters going to be? Like, we know there are more SEGA crossover characters coming. I think there are like, 8 confirmed? Yeah, 8. There's 8 crossover slots left, because so far we have Miku, Joker, Ichiban from Yakuza, I think, and Knights. Knights was on, like, the back of the box for the physical edition of the game. I don't have the physical edition, so I can't show you. But I know that she's going to be in the game. And so I kind of was just curious. They gave us this content roadmap that has 8 more slots, so I'm curious, what are these other SEGA crossovers going to be? So, a few rules before we get into this. No, we're not going to discuss the paid DLC. So no, none of, like, the SpongeBob, Avatar, TMNT, that sort of stuff. Because all that's already been revealed. We are getting Mega Man, and I need nothing else in my life ever. I can die happy. These other characters seem to be more like SEGA crossover focused, so I'm going to stick primarily to SEGA characters for these. And also, these ones are not going to have any tracks with them, just because these characters are just released for free. They don't come with the tracks like the paid DLC characters do. So, another thing is that SEGA seems to be focusing on characters that are relevant to a modern audience here, with the exception of Knights. Because Joker, Ichiban, Miku all have had relatively recent SEGA games. So I'm going to say it's about like a 3-to-1 ratio of modern relevant characters to older picks. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into things. First pick is II for Monkey Ball. I mean, this is a really safe bet. Monkey Ball's been a huge success for SEGA, and it's only gotten more popular in recent years. I know that the last game that they just came out with was a pretty big success. A lot of people liked it, from what I understand. I don't play Monkey Ball, so I wouldn't know. You're gonna see that's a recurring theme here. I don't play a lot of these games, but another thing is, like, II has also been, not only was II in the original Sonic Riders, he was also in both of the All-Stars Racing games. So I think II is a pretty safe bet here, just because SEGA likes to bring in Monkey Ball for crossovers. And then there was, of course, like the Sonic DLC crossover in one of the Monkey Ball games recently that I saw a trailer for. So there's that. My next guess is actually going to be a bit of a weird pick. A lot of you probably weren't expecting this. Bayonetta. I think Bayonetta is pretty likely here. She's a very popular character, super recognizable. She's been in Smash, so we don't have to worry about her being, toned down for the age group, because she's already been toned down to an E10 game before. The other thing, there's going to be a bit of confusion here, because a lot of people are like, wait, isn't Bayonetta a Nintendo character? No. The rights to Bayonetta 2 and 3, those games were funded by Nintendo partially, and then they also have the exclusive publishing rights. So I don't know if that prevents them from putting, like, the Bayonetta 2 and 3 designs of Bayonetta in other SEGA games, but no, SEGA does own the Bayonetta IP. They published the first game, and they've actually been, like, repeatedly republishing it since Bayonetta 2 and 3 have been coming out. So it's clear that they do have some value of Bayonetta still, but it is a SEGA IP, very popular, and I think that, again, that Smash recognizability. I mean, a lot of the crossover characters we've gotten so far have been in Smash. We've got Steve, we've got Joker. Unfortunately, not Miku. Rest in peace, Miku Smash fans. And then, last but not least, for this little section here, I had a guess for Amity from Puyo Puyo. Because Puyo Puyo is, like, the second biggest puzzle game right next to Tetris. They've had, like, crossovers for the last couple years. For some of the most recent Puyo Puyo games, you've had Puyo Puyo Tetris. Those games, I really like Puyo Puyo, actually. I've only played a couple of them. I've only played Puyo Puyo Tetris 1. But, like, those games have, like, a pretty large cast of characters, and I think Amity's been around since, like, the Dreamcast game? So, I don't see why she couldn't show up here. And Sonic even crossed over into Puyo Puyo Tetris 2, so that's clearly some linkage there. I think that there's a good chance of Amity being in here. It's weird that she wasn't in any of the other, like, SEGA crossover games. She wasn't in any of the All-Stars Racing games. She never made an appearance as a guest character in Riders. So that's just kind of weird to me. I think that, like, Amity deserves a chance, Puyo Puyo's pretty recognizable. It's a big puzzle game. Why not? And also just, like, for that genre variety of it being a puzzle game, We don't have a lot of those in these kind of games. So we're at the halfway point about it at this point. We've gone through 3 of the 8 characters, and I kind of just want to shake things up a little now that we're at the middle. Let's be completely honest, I just made this video to beg for these characters to get in. Tangle and Whisper. Tangle and Whisper, if you're not familiar, are characters from the IDW Sonic comics, which are canon to the games as of Frontiers, because, like, Sonic has that line referencing Tangle climbing all over the ruins. So we know that the games are canon. Tangle and Whisper specifically were the first 2 original characters introduced to the comic, unless you count Rough and Tumble. I don't. Those are just kind of like generic bad guys that they want to show up occasionally, and they're fun. But Tangle and Whisper are like the most iconic characters from the comics, absolutely, without question. Only other one I'd say is like more iconic is Surge. And if we had more room for more comic characters, I'd absolutely throw Surge in here. But Tangle and Whisper, they're iconic. They're gay as fuck. I don't know if you've seen that, but there's like that one panel of them just like holding hands in front of the lesbian flag. So it's like, yeah, no, Tangle and Whisper are gay. Sorry. But Tangle and Whisper have also made the jump to the games themselves in some of the mobile titles. They've been in Sonic Dash. They've been in Sonic Forces Speed Battle. So I think bringing them into the games directly isn't unheard of, especially when it comes to like stuff like a spin-off here, as much as I'd love to see them in a mainline game at some point. Yeah, I think that like throwing in a couple more Sonic characters, but not the ones you typically like expect to get into a game like this, right in the middle of things, really would shake things up in a great way. Honestly, I think that throwing them right here in the middle would be perfect. Well, of course, you gotta release them together because, like I said, they're gay. Next up, Joe Musashi. I actually don't know a ton about Shinobi personally, but I do know there was just recently a brand new Shinobi game that came out, Art of Vengeance, that a lot of people have been saying is really, really good, apparently. And Joe Musashi's been in a bunch of the, or not a bunch of the SEGA crossover games. He was in Transformed pretty much, and I think that was his only other appearance, but like, I think that throwing him in here would be good. It's like, I mean, Shinobi's been around since like really early SEGA stuff, so I think he's a perfect fit. My other pick for this slot would have been Amigo. I was really, really having a really hard time deciding between Amigo and Joe Musashi, but I decided Amigo just isn't quite as relevant. He's had a couple new games recently, but they never really it doesn't seem like they made quite as big of a splash as SEGA wanted them to. And I kind of wanted to balance the more like cartoony, animalistic characters with more human figures. But speaking of the cartoony characters, Billy Hatcher. I think Billy Hatcher is really, really likely. He is one of those characters that has not had a game recently at all. His last game, his only game was on the GameCube, really. But the main reason I'm including him here is because he was originally developed by Sonic Team, which the only other character on this roster that shares that was Knights. And like, I think those are, if I'm not mistaken, those are the only 2 non-Sonic games that Sonic Team's ever made, is Knights and Billy Hatcher. So I'm like, hey, if Knights is getting into the game, why not throw Billy Hatcher in there too? He's not quite as relevant or recognizable, but he had that weapon in Shadow the Hedgehog based off of him. And he also previously appeared in Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. So knowing my extreme gear bias, because I'm a Riders nut, you could throw his board from Riders in, just like they're doing with Knights, as his vehicle. And I think that could be really fun. I think he'd fit right in with the rest of the cast here. He did actually, you know what? He wasn't in the All-Stars Racing games either, but he did have that track in All-Stars Racing Transformed. So there is some precedence for Billy Hatcher being referenced, and I think it's about damn time he got to be playable in one of these racing games. And last but not least, I feel like this one's a pretty obvious pick, Beat from Jet Set Radio. I mean, Jet Set Radio has always been one of Sega's most popular series since it debuted on the Dreamcast. Like, people love Jet Set Radio. Get Hideki Naganuma to do some music for the game to throw in like they did with the Miku tracks. Oh my god, I would kill for that. The fact that Back to Back doesn't play on Water Palace makes me cry every time I race on that track. But, I mean, even though like Jet Set Radio hasn't had a new game in 20 years, like, they're still super popular. It got that huge like indie spiritual successor that got made with Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, which is a fantastic game. You should play it if you haven't. And then that's getting a sequel now, which is awesome. And they just a couple years ago at the Game Awards, they announced that a new Jet Set Radio is being made right alongside Shinobi Art of Vengeance and like a new Crazy Taxi, a new Golden Axe, a bunch of stuff. And I think he fits right in with the aesthetic of a bunch of the other SEGA characters here. He kind of rides the line between those more humanoid characters and the more cartoony ones, just because of like the cel-shaded art style of the Jet Set Radio games. And there was that costume based on him in Sonic Forces, so like there's precedent there. All that said, yeah, those are the 8 characters I wanted to predict here today. We've got Ai from Monkey Ball, Bayonetta from Bayonetta, Amity from Puyo Puyo, Tangle and Whisper from the Sonic IDW comics, Joe Musashi from Shinobi, Billy Hatcher from Billy Hatcher, and Beat from Jet Set Radio. And I think that's a pretty good roster, honestly. I think that would be satisfying both to newer fans of Sega and to more more traditional classic Sega fans. I think that'd be a really satisfying roster that gets a lot of people happy. Of course, there are some like cuts here that I didn't really want to make, like Amigo. and I think there's a bunch of other SEGA characters you could throw in here that would really fit. But with that said, we only got 8 slots, which isn't a lot, so I think with the 8 slots we have, this is a pretty good roster. Anyway, if you liked the video, go ahead and drop a like, subscribe, hype the video if that works. I don't know if that works. YouTube is gonna YouTube. You all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.
Push me to the max.